Greetings all. This is a nice little walkthrough session or an explanation on medical aid rebates available to all South African individuals who are taxpayers, also commonly known as Section 6A and 6B of the Income Tax Act. So basically, SARS has allowed each individual, depending on age and certain categories, to get a monthly rebate in the form of a deduction actually after your normal tax per month. So per month, each individual gets a set amount, and depending, like I said, on your age and your disability, maybe you get a different rebate available to you. So the first one is the Section 6A, that's your normal medical tax credit. The 6B is your additional medical tax credit. So there's a very nice example here up on the slide, which is very simple and self-explanatory. But just in a nutshell, if you're an individual under 65 years of age, you get 319 Rand per month per person. That's for the first person, the registered member. You have to be a registered member, registered to actually, an approved medical aid fund or to a medical aid that's registered. And then the next dependent or the additional person. So it doesn't have to be the spouse. So the first person gets 319 and the next person, next dependent on the medical aid, also gets 319. So this can be a child, a spouse, a parent. It doesn't matter. So it's yourself, the first dependent, and then thereafter every other dependent will get 215 Rand per month. So two very, very important amounts to remember is 319 and 215. So for example, if you say a husband, wife, two children, your Section 6A medical tax credit will be 319 plus 319, that's for the two people, and then after the second dependent it will be 215 for child 1, 215 for the next child, and that is per month, so it's times 12 months, and that will then be your medical scheme fees tax credit, which is your section 6A. Okay, so there's a lovely example here on Paul, and he's 48 years old, and if you go through it, it's very nice and explained very well. And next one, then you get an additional medical expenses tax credit called the 6B tax credit. That is over and above. So that's your second rebate that SARS has allowed for individuals to receive. So basically, anyone who's less than 65 and without a disability, your additional medical tax expense credit, also a formula, but a very simple one. You take your total contribution. How much have you contributed to this registered medical aid? Less. Remember we spoke about the MTC, which is your Section 6A. So once you get that amount, you take 4 times that. The 4 is a prescribed amount from the legislation, from SARS, to any individual who's under 65 and no disability. So you take your total contribution minus 4 times your Section 6A rebate plus qualifying medical expenses which have not been reimbursed. So for example, you have medical expenses that have added up to an amount, and the medical aid will not reimburse you for that day-to-day expenses. You add that to this amount, and then you take 7.5%. So whatever is above 7.5% of your taxable income, you take 25% of that, and you get your Section 6B rebate. So this is, a formula, and again, there's an example on the slide, which if you follow step by step, it's very self-explanatory. And then the last one, which is the difference. So remember, your 6A is your medical tax credit. That stays the same regardless of your age and your disability. The big difference and the most important part of this is the additional medical tax credit, which is your 6B, which differs based on your age and based on your disability status, for example. So perhaps you are under 65, but you have a dependent or the main member has a disability as defined in the Income Tax Act, and then the rules change for 6B. Or you are over 65, and then it's exactly the same rules of someone with a disability. And how that works is, again, you take your total contributions to the medical aid and you minus 3. Not 4 like the previous example, it's 3 prescribed by legislation times your MTC, which was your 6A. You add your qualifying expenses to that, you get a total amount of that, and 33.3% of this amount is your AMTC, which is your additional medical tax credit, which is your 6B. So again, self-explanatory, a very nice example on the slide, but it's important to understand the MTC, which is your medical tax credit 6A, and then your additional medical tax credit, which is your 6B. Remember, like I said, your 6A stays standard depending on how many people, depending on how many dependents on this medical aid, you get an amount. The difference, or the more complicated part of this is the 6B. So once you're doing the 6B, very important to look at your age and your disability status. And based on that, there are two different formulas. We spoke about the prescribed 4 times your MTC, or the prescribed 3 times your MTC, depending on that.